Hey, it's Mike Lucien, and we're back for the final part of our handcuff running back special here, where we go over the tiers. All right, the tiers is going to help you with your draft. So let's get a couple of things sort of situated before we start here. Number one, these tiers are not solely based off of talent. I considered a few different factors here. One, of course, talent. Okay? Two, situation. Running back, more than any position in fantasy football, is dependent on situation. Okay, I was talking to one of my good friends. He's a Buffalo Bills fan. He's asking me about James Cook. And I said, the problem with James Cook is he plays for the Bills. They have Ty Johnson. They have Josh Allen. Both of those players cap his potential. If he were in a different situation, okay, say he was the Jaguars running back, he'd probably be a late first round pick. Okay, so situation's so important. And then last, cost. Okay, jumping right off the page here is probably David Montgomery third. Okay, and in my second tier of handcuff running backs. That doesn't mean that I don't want to draft David Montgomery over Zach Charbonnet, for example. What it means is I have to consider the cost of drafting these players. All right. David Montgomery in some leagues goes in the late fifth round or the sixth round. Personally, I want to take a high upside emerging wide receiver in that range and not a handcuff running back, even though someone like Montgomery has some standalone value. Okay, so those are the three factors that I've really considered here, and we're going to get into this. And we're going to talk about all of these guys. First, tier one is Zach Charbonnet and Kinshawn Judkins. The reason for this is simple. Both of these players, in my opinion, have a chance to be starters early in the season, even without injuries to the current starters. Okay, so start with Charbonnet. I mentioned if you watch part two where I was talking about the NFC running back situations. Brock Huard, okay, the former Seahawks and University of Washington quarterback. He's a radio personality now. He was speculating that Charbonnet has earned the starting running back situation. Again, speculating. He wasn't talking about inside sources or anything like that. Now, I think he could be right about that. Ken Walker's foot injury seems to keep happening. He's healthy. I get that. They're managing him in camp. Ken Walker looks like he's going to be fine for week one. But it wouldn't shock me if Zach Charbonnet is just the starter out of the gate. And this is a situation that I think is going to produce a top 12 running back in fantasy football. So whether it's Ken Walker or Charbonnet or throughout the season, the combination of both of them, maybe Walker starts the year as the starter, Charbonnet takes over, or there's an injury. I think that if you look at the Seahawks running back situation, it will be top 12 by the end of the year. And so that's what we want. And I'm taking Charbonnet late in the 8th round or in the 9th round. He's been going in the 10th round. Okay, as a reference, this is a FFPC main event draft. I looked at a few of these. All right. The reason I looked at these are the entry fee here is $2,200. Okay, so doesn't necessarily mean that the people who are signing up for these are smarter than people signing up for $5 leagues on Underdog or DraftKings, but they at least probably take it seriously since they're willing to spend that much money on it. And he's been going in the 10th round in those drafts. I'm taking him in the 8th and 9th round. When I do my FFPC drafts, I want him on every one of my rosters. With Judkins, well, I would have said the same thing about him. Okay, I actually recorded the first part of this series and did say I wanted him on all of my rosters. That was before the news broke that he's been cleared and he's going to sign. Now he's not going to be on all of my rosters because his ADP is going to rise. He was going in about the 12th round. I really like that value. This is Josh Jacobs to me. Okay? And if you can draft Josh Jacobs, and even if he's, possibly going to be suspended for a few games, even though he's been cleared, or, he's not up to speed and maybe he doesn't start until October, sign me up. When you get to, when I have round 5 here, I'm thinking very late round 5, certainly in round 6, sign me up. If you're looking at round 6, you're looking at a guy like Tony Pollard who will get you by as a running back too. Okay, but here's the problem. Running back 2s in fantasy football don't really matter. What you want is 2 running back 1s. And that's the whole point of me doing this series. Okay, because it's hard to draft 2 running back 1s. So what you really have to do is draft maybe 1 and then kind of get lucky that you end up drafting the right handcuff who has running back 1, meaning top 12 running back potential. Okay, I think Judkins has that. So even if you're looking at top 12 and a points per game, I'm taking that shot in the 6th round for sure. I think he will certainly be the starter at some point by around the beginning of October, if not sooner. Okay, tier 2. These are players who have immediate roles. You could put them in your lineup right now. They can get you by in the beginning of the season as your running back 2. But if anything were to happen to the perceived starter, then they have, in Montgomery's case, high-end running back 1 potential. In Mason's case, low-end running back 1 potential. Okay, so Montgomery, we don't need to talk too much about him. I'm probably not going to get him in a lot of leagues because he goes a little bit higher than the mid to late 7th round, but that's where I'm willing to draft him. If something happens to Jahmyr Gibbs, then he's a fantastic pick, even where he's currently going, okay, in the 6th round. And Jordan Mason, he's going to get goal line carries. It's very clear that that's why the Vikings brought him in. Their goal line run game was terrible last year. I expect that he'll also get some of the other, a lot of the other carries. It should be 50-50 with Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones is 30 years old now. So, the potential for him to break down is there. The Vikings have a good offensive line, a good offense. So if Mason has an Aaron Jones injury or Aaron Jones breaks down, then I could see him being someone who could potentially finish as a low-end running back 1. Or even if you're saying like running back 13, 14, 15, I'm still taking that shot in the 8th or 9th round. Tier 3 here. These are players who are currently handcuffs, but have the potential to overtake their starters at some point during the year, even if there is no injury. Okay? I've got Tootin a little bit ahead of Scatterbo, even though Scatterbo gets drafted first. And that's just because I like Tyrone Tracy more than I like Etienne and Tank Bigsby. So I think Tootin has less to overcome. I considered moving him up to a higher tier because I think that he could also be a starter when the season begins. But I think it's a lot less likely just because he's got some ball security issues. He's got to still show that he can hold up in pass protection. So I think really with him, you're kind of looking at, you're hoping for maybe the end of September or October, but it could even be later in the season. But Bashal Tootin is someone that I'm very happy to draft in the 9th or 10th round. Sort of like Charbonnet, I'm going to be looking to get him in almost all of my drafts. And Scatterbo, same goes for him. Okay, I probably won't get him in all of my drafts because I like Tootin a little bit more, and they go in the same round usually. But I mentioned in the last video that It's interesting to think of potentially using the strategy of investing just in the Giants' run game for one of your running back spots. Okay, if you take a look at your running back 2 spot and you say to yourself, I'm going to draft Tyrone Tracy in the 8th round, and then I'm going to draft Cam Scatterbo in the 9th or 10th round. I think that you could be getting like running back 15-ish potential um, for the entire season except for the Giants bye week. Tracy's obviously going to be the starter early in the year. I think Scatterbo has the talent to potentially overtake him. I like both of those guys, and I that's a really interesting situation. Okay, if you wanted to completely sort of punt running backs in the early round, consider this, and this doesn't work for best ball, but if you draft Ken Walker in the 4th round and then draft Charbonnet in the 8th round, and then maybe you take, we'll say you draft Charbonnet in the 9th round. Okay, so round 4 Ken Walker, round 9 Zach Charbonnet. One of your running back spots is set. That's going to be top 12 production. Round 8 Tyrone Tracy, round 10 Cam Scatterbo. Now you've got 4 roster spots that are running backs, but you're really set with probably a top 12 running back in that Seahawks situation and a top 15, 16 running back with that Giants situation for the entirety of the season, except for, the 2 bye weeks. And think about that. That frees up the rest of your draft for wide receivers, quarterbacks, a tight end. That's a really interesting strategy, I think, this year that could pay off. All right, moving on. This 4th tier, these are players who should have an immediate role in their offense and have the potential to have more of a role than people expect at this time. Braylon Allen. I'm not going to talk about Breece Hall getting traded like I expect that he will, if not before the season, by the trade deadline, because I've already talked about it in detail in multiple videos. Okay, so go back and watch those. But if that happens, Braylon Allen is Derrick Henry light. Okay, Roschon Johnson. I've talked about this a few times as well, but I expect that he will have a big role in that offense. And you might be saying to, in your head right now, but he's Roschon Johnson. You just said that running back 2s don't really matter. Like running back 20 to 30, they don't really matter. Okay. Yes. But look what Jamal Williams did with Ben Johnson. Think about what Jamal Williams was before Ben Johnson. Think about what David Montgomery was before Ben Johnson. That Bears offensive line is a lot better this year. Caleb Williams has a year under his belt. We can't completely rule out Roschon Johnson scoring 12, 13 touchdowns. And DeAndre Swift is not Jahmyr Gibbs. Okay? So I think he could have a role in that offense. And look where I'm willing to take him. I'm willing to take him in round 14 or 15. He's practically free at that point. There's very little risk. If I'm wrong, you could drop him after week 1 or 2. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. He's been the preseason darling. Rookie out of Arizona, was ruled ineligible after his first game there. He didn't do anything wrong. Just it was a whole thing. Anyway, he showed up at the East-West Shrine game, was really good there, got drafted, and now he's got Ben Standig, the outstanding beat writer for the Washington Commanders, saying that he wouldn't be surprised if Brian Robinson weren't on the team week 1 because he doesn't understand how you keep Krosky-Merritt off the field. I've previously speculated, I don't know if Austin Eckler would be on the roster week 1. Now, one of those two will. Okay, they're not getting rid of both of them. Standig thinks that it would be Robinson out the door. I tend to think that, it's just me speculating that Krosky Merritt's a lot more like Eckler, and with Eckler being, at the end of his career and not having anything left on his deal after this year, he makes the most sense to move out. But either way, Krosky Merritt is someone who looks like he could have a role in potentially the starting role at some point during the season, and some sort of immediate role, even if it's a platoon situation when the year starts. All right, this next tier, Tyler Algier, Isaac Guerendo, Blake Corum. This tier can be summed up really easily. They're not going in your lineup if the starting running backs on those teams don't get injured. And they are absolutely in every redraft lineup if the starting running backs do get injured. Okay, so I like Algier the most out of all of them because he goes just a little bit later than Guerendo, and he doesn't have Jordan James there, right? Guerendo's injured. It's not a big deal. He's going to be back soon. But Algier's healthy, and he doesn't have Jordan James hanging around in that backfield with him. Blake Corum, he goes in round 14 or 15. I love that value. The only reason he's not higher here is because he's got Jarquez Hunter there. And we don't know for sure that Blake Corum would be the pure handcuff to Kyren Williams. It's just my guess at this point, but we're going to keep an eye on the preseason news as we talked about in the last video. If you hadn't seen that, I'm telling you specifically what I'm looking for from the Rams in the preseason to try to figure out that situation. All right, next tier is Rico Dowdle in a tier by himself. Well, why is he in a tier by himself? Here's why. If something happens to Chuba Hubbard, I don't see Rico Dowdle having the talent to be a league winner. But I do really like his situation. Panthers are a really good run blocking team. And I really do like his cost. Round 13 or round 14 is where you can get him. I know Trevor Etienne is there, but he's a rookie. Truthfully, he wasn't great at Georgia. I would expect Dowdle to have a little bit of a role on third downs when the season starts, but Dave Canales likes to play one back, and I think that would benefit Dowdle if Hubbard were injured. So the situation, I think, with a Hubbard injury would sort of make Dowdle like a running back 20-ish type play. So not spectacular, okay? Not a league winner, but someone who's probably going to be in a lot of lineups if the starter gets hurt. All right, this next tier. These are all essentially handcuffs who are interesting, but I'm not super excited about them. Najee Harris, well, we know about the eye injury. Okay, it sounds like he's starting to ramp up his practice a little bit. It certainly seems like he's going to be behind Amarian Hampton at this point. We don't know exactly when he's going to be back. The offensive line is a mess now with Rashawn Slater out. Jalen Wright, clear handcuff. And that seems like it would be a great thing, but that offensive line is a mess. Okay, so I think it caps his upside. Tajay Spears has the high ankle injury right now. Honestly, it doesn't really bother me that much because you weren't drafting Tajay Spears to play in week 1. You're drafting Tajay Spears thinking maybe by like week 6 or 7 or some point in the season, something happens to Tony Pollard and I have the backup. But I don't think Tajay Spears is that good. So although I think he would dominate touches, and it'd still be another back involved if something happened to Pollard later in the season, you probably still see Julius Chestnut getting a few carries a game. I don't think Tajay Spears is going to, even if he gets healthy and something happens to Pollard, I don't see him really having that kind of like league winning potential. Okay, so He's there. He's interesting, but he's not someone who I'm really excited about. Same goes for Will Shipley. I like Will Shipley, but if something happens to Barkley, well, he's got Hurts still there. A.J. Dillon might factor in. I don't mind Will Shipley in the 14th round. I'm not super excited about him, though. And Ray Davis is probably, you guys probably think I'm nuts to have Ray Davis this low. Okay? Everybody loves Ray Davis and his upside. I like Ray Davis, the football player. I like Ray Davis, the running back. Go back to that first video. The Bills were the first team that I covered. I explained exactly why Ray Davis has a lower ceiling as a handcuff than people think. Okay? Ty Johnson is going to have a passing game role. It's not going away. Brandon Beane said the other day, it's not going away. Ty Johnson's going to have a role. That caps the upside for both Cook and Davis. And then Josh Allen has 8 to 15 rushing touchdowns every year. So Ray Davis is not someone who I'm super excited about. I'll take him in round 12. He's been going earlier than that. So I don't love that situation. And Trey Benson is someone who I don't know if he's that good. I was lower on him when he was in the draft. You know, they keep saying he's going to have a role, but I don't know. James Conner played all the snaps with the starters last week. It's just preseason week 1. But if you go based off what you saw last year, if you go based off what you see preseason week 1, if you go based off of James Conner being, you know, a top 15 running back the last couple of years, and also if you factor in that the Cardinals don't really have a very good offensive line, Trey Benson's going in like the 10th round. I'm out on him at that price. I'll take him in round 12, which means I'll probably never draft him. All right. Let's finish this up here. We've got one big tier and then a mini tier there at the end. Keaton Mitchell, Taj Brooks, DJ Giddens, Hunter, Marshawn Lloyd, Emmanuel Wilson, Elijah Mitchell, Maffa, Woody Marks, Dylan Sampson. I went into detail on all of these guys if you listen to part 1 and part 2. Okay? Essentially, they're kind of players that they don't have really league-winning potential. All right, Keaton Mitchell, if something happens to Henry, Justice Hill will still be a little bit of a factor, and Lamar Jackson's a factor there as well, right? So I like Keaton Mitchell. I'm drafting him, but he's not winning you a league most likely if something happens to Derrick Henry. And the same goes for Taj Brooks. I talked about how Pirine would be involved there along with Brooks if something happened to Chase Brown. Giddens looks like the clear handcuff for Jonathan Taylor, but he's not ready for an NFL passing game yet. So they're not going to trust him in pass protection. He's not a great receiver. That kind of caps his upside. Jarquez Hunter, he could move up this list if we see that he moves ahead of Corum. I talked about how I really like Marshawn Lloyd and Emmanuel Wilson at their costs. We need to see one of them emerge over the other. I also really like Elijah Mitchell, and he's practically free. But again, this is kind of just like taking a shot because that looks like a murky backup situation right there. It looks like Kareem Hunt might be involved, and Elijah Mitchell might take some of the passing game work if something happened to Pacheco. Maffa, okay, I like him, but he might not even play this year. He could be inactive all year. Woody Marks, I like Woody Marks, the football player. He caught a lot of passes in college. It doesn't look like he's going to have a role when the season starts. Dari Ungabu, I should have that name down by now. The guy who used to play for the Jaguars who played for the Texans last year, Dari Ugunbowale. There we go. Third time's a charm. He looks like he's going to start the year as the third down back, and he might finish the year as the third down back. Okay, so a lot has to happen for Woody Marks to see the field. Dylan Sampson, I really like Dylan Sampson. I think at some point in the next couple years, you're going to see a Brown situation where Judkins is the early down back, Dylan Sampson is the third down back. But I'm not sure that that's going to happen this year with Jerome Ford still there. So, Dylan Sampson's going early. It'll be interesting to see where his ADP shakes out now that Judkins is back. But I want Dylan Sampson in the 13th round. I'm probably not getting him there. Okay, maybe his ADP will correct now, and I will be able to get him there, but I wasn't going to be able to get him there before yesterday, before the Judkins names. And then this last tier, this is just a tier that's not exciting, okay? These are both projected handcuffs right now. Raheem Mostert, if you want to take him in the 20th round, fine, he's basically free. But it sounds like he's in a serious competition with Zamir White right now for that handcuff role with the Raiders. So, I'm not really excited there. He's over 30 years old. He's not going to win you a league even if something happens to Genti. And then Rachaad White, kind of the same deal. Look where he's going. He's going higher than the 13th round right now. And he's just not somebody who I even trust to be the direct handcuff. We talked about how that could be Sean Tucker. So, if I'm spending a 12th round pick on a handcuff running back, then I want to make sure that he actually is the handcuff running back. And we don't know that that's the case with Rachaad White. All right, so these are the tiers. They have a little bit of a chance to change. We're still keeping an eye on a couple of situations, the Packers situation, the Rams situation, but we're getting pretty close to the season here. So, they're getting pretty close to being set in stone. If you want to see if there is any news with this, along with, of course, any other fantasy relevant news, you can check out my preseason recap videos that will be coming out all weekend. We've got a full weekend of preseason action here. So I'll take everything that happens, decipher the fantasy relevant news, and post it with my regular updates. Okay. Thank you for following along with the Handcuff Running Back series. And we'll have more of these strategy series videos coming up within the next week, along with some of my draft recaps when I start my FFPC drafts. All right, so thanks for watching, and stay tuned for plenty of more content on Walter Football this weekend.